My name is Zara, and if you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, this story is for you. I was mocked, blamed, shamed, but I never raised my voice. I just waited for the right moment, and when it came, I didn't just walk away. I left them shattered. Before we begin, this is a true story. Names have been changed, but the pain, betrayal, and sweet revenge are all real. If you're new here, hit subscribe, because this story of karma will leave you speechless. I was raised to believe that education was the great equalizer. My father, who'd fled Iran with nothing but his medical textbooks, drilled this into me from childhood. Zara, he'd say, knowledge is the one thing they can never take from you. He worked as a janitor while learning English, eventually recertifying as a doctor. My mother taught Farsi while getting her nursing degree. Their sacrifice put me through medical school. I graduated top of my class at Columbia Medical, completed my residency at Mount Sinai, and by 30, I was chief resident in obstetrics. The irony of helping others create families while being branded barren wasn't lost on me. I met James Kane at the hospital's annual charity gala. He was everything old money should be: tall, patrician features, Harvard law degree, and a family name that dated back to New York's founding. I was the ambitious immigrant's daughter who'd earned her way into Manhattan's elite medical circles. On paper, we were the perfect modern couple. The courtship was a whirlwind. Private jets to Paris for dinner, yacht weekends in the Hamptons, his family's box at the Met Opera. Sarah Kane, my future mother-in-law, seemed thrilled at first. Such an accomplished young woman, she'd tell her friends at the country club. A doctor! How modern of James! Our wedding was featured in every society page. East meets West in Upper East Side fairy tale, the headlines gushed. 800 guests at St. Patrick's Cathedral, reception at the Plaza, honeymoon in the Maldives. The Kane family spared no expense showing off their multicultural credentials. The first hint of trouble came 3 months after the wedding. Sarah hosted a baby shower for her niece, insisting I attend despite being on call. "Darling," she'd drawled, champagne in hand, "when are you and James giving me a grandchild? The Kane name must continue." That was the beginning. By month 6, the hints became questions. By month 12, the questions became demands. The family's Christmas card featured Sarah posed with her friends' grandchildren. "Hoping for our own bundle of joy next year," the caption read. James watched it all with detached amusement. "Mother's just traditional," he'd say, loosening his tie after another tense dinner. "Give her time." But time only made it worse. Year 2 brought the empty high chairs. Sarah would place them strategically at family gatherings, decorated with blue or pink ribbons. "Just manifesting," she'd smile, steel behind her eyes. "Perhaps if you worked less," she'd suggest during Sunday brunches. Children need a present mother. I reduced my hours at the hospital, started acupuncture, tried every fertility supplement recommended by Sarah's society friends. Each failure was publicly dissected at family events. "The Kane line goes back to the Mayflower," Sarah would remind everyone within earshot. "Such a shame if it ends here." Year 3 brought the specialists. Sarah had connections to every fertility clinic in Manhattan. I endured countless tests, invasive procedures, and public speculation about my reproductive capabilities. Each test showed the same thing: I was perfectly fertile. James avoided his own testing with practiced skill. "Work stress," he'd claim. "Year-end acquisitions." Always an excuse, always too busy. I started noticing patterns. How he'd change the subject when children were mentioned. How he'd tense when we ran into his college girlfriend, Claire, with her 3 beautiful children. The way he'd review my medical reports with too much relief. Year 4 brought the dinner parties. Sarah invited every eligible woman in James's social circle, all with proven fertility. "Just friends from the club," she'd insist, but the message was clear: replaceable. I documented everything. Every slight, every coincidental meeting with fertile socialites, every medical report. My father's voice echoed in my head. "Knowledge is power, Zara June." Then came the breakthrough. Dr. Peterson was new to Manhattan Fertility Associates, fresh from Johns Hopkins, not yet versed in Kane family politics. He reviewed my extensive file with growing confusion. "Mrs. Kane, your fertility levels are exceptional," he said, frowning at his tablet. "The issue He turned to James, who was pretending to take a business call. "Mr. Kane, given your medical history from college, we should really—" James ended his fake call abruptly. "That's enough." But Dr. Peterson continued. "The mumps case in sophomore year. The complications. Surely you've discussed this." The silence in the room was deafening. That night, I called my old colleague at Columbia Presbyterian, where James had been treated in college. Dr. Sarah Chen owed me a favor. I'd covered her maternity leave twice. "Give me an hour," she said. The records arrived encrypted. Severe bilateral orchitis following mumps infection, resulting in complete azoospermia. Fertility tests showing 0 sperm count. Multiple consultations confirming the condition was permanent. But there was more. A sealed court case from 15 years ago. Claire Thompson versus James Kane. My contact in the courthouse, a nurse whose child I'd delivered, slipped me the details. Claire had discovered James's infertility during their engagement. When she got pregnant through fertility treatments using donor sperm, James paid for her silence. The settlement included ongoing payments for all 3 children she eventually had. Hush money disguised as family support. The pieces started fitting together. James hadn't just known about his infertility. He'd orchestrated an elaborate cover-up spanning decades. He'd chosen me, a successful doctor, as his wife for a reason. Who would question a physician's fertility? I spent the next 6 months building my case meticulously. Bank statements showing regular payments to Claire, medical records from 3 different states, insurance claims, email trails, even his Harvard medical records showing follow-up treatments. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Sarah's personal assistant, Maria, had watched me endure years of humiliation. One evening, she slipped me a USB drive. "Mrs. Kane keeps everything," she whispered, "including her son's medical records from college. She knows Mrs. Zara. She's always known." The drive contained emails between Sarah and James from 15 years ago, discussing the unfortunate situation and how to manage future marriages. They'd planned this. My entire marriage was a carefully constructed lie. I took everything to my own lawyer, Rebecca Goldman. She reviewed the evidence in her corner office overlooking Central Park. "This is comprehensive," she said, closing the last file. "What do you want to do?" I had options. I could expose them immediately, file for divorce, go public with their deception. The Kane family name would be ruined. But that felt too quick, too merciful. "I want them to feel what I felt," I replied. "Every day of shame, every public humiliation, every moment of powerlessness." Rebecca smiled. "Then let's plan this properly." We spent weeks preparing documents, setting up offshore accounts, creating an unbreakable case. I transferred my personal assets to secure accounts, updated my medical credentials to my maiden name, prepared for every contingency. Through it all, I maintained my role as the perfect Kane wife, attended charity galas, hosted dinner parties, endured Sarah's increasingly vicious commentary about my failure as a woman. Last week, Sarah outdid herself. She converted the guest room into a nursery, complete with Kane family heirlooms and a hand-painted mural of the family tree. "For when the miracle happens," she announced at Sunday dinner, gesturing to the empty branches on the wall. "Though perhaps we should consider other options for continuing the Kane line." James shifted uncomfortably in his chair, reaching for his scotch. I touched the envelope in my purse, containing copies of everything: medical records, court documents, payment trails, Sarah's emails. Tomorrow, they would all receive their own copies, along with my divorce papers and a detailed press package. But tonight, I smiled serenely and raised my water glass. "Actually," I said, watching James freeze mid-sip, "I have some interesting news about the Kane family fertility situation." Sarah leaned forward eagerly, victory gleaming in her eyes. She thought I was finally admitting defeat, making way for their other options. She had no idea what was coming. The morning after that final dinner, I set my plan in motion with surgical precision. Timing was everything. Each revelation carefully orchestrated for maximum impact. At 9:00 a.m., 3 couriers delivered sealed packages. 1. One to James's law firm, Kensington and Kane. 2. One to Sarah's weekly charity board meeting at the Metropolitan Club. 3. 1 to the Kane family attorney. I scheduled my delivery for 9:15 a.m. during the law firm's morning partner meeting. James always sat at the head of the conference table, presenting case strategies to the firm's senior partners. Today's presentation would be interrupted by something far more interesting. The package contained 1. Complete medical records proving James's infertility. 2. Documentation of the Claire Thompson settlement. 3. Proof of Sarah's knowledge and complicity. 4. A USB drive containing recorded conversations. 5. My divorce petition. 6. A detailed letter to the partners explaining how James had used firm money to pay for his cover-up. But that was just the opening act. At 9:30 a.m., Sarah would be midway through her presentation to the hospital board about the Kane family wing's new pediatric center. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd spent years mocking my inability to produce children while using my medical connections to enhance the family's philanthropy. Her package contained additional materials. 1. Emails between her and James planning my marriage. 2. Records of her payments to fertility clinics to falsify reports. 3. Documentation of her role in covering up James's condition. 4. A separate USB drive with recordings of her admitting everything to her assistant. The society maven who'd spent years orchestrating my humiliation would face her own public undoing. The family attorney received the most comprehensive file, including 1. Evidence of financial fraud. 2. Tax evasion documentation. 3. Proof of illegal payments. 4. A complete timeline of their deception. By 10 o'clock a.m., my phone started buzzing. James, what have you done? Sarah, you vindictive little... The firm's managing partner. Mrs. Kane, could you come in immediately? Various society friends. OMG, is it true? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I walked into Mount Sinai Hospital and submitted my resignation, effective immediately. Dr. Zara Ahmadi would be accepting a position at Johns Hopkins, leaving Dr. Zara Kane firmly in the past. The explosion was nuclear. James was immediately suspended from the firm, pending investigation. Sarah was escorted out of the Metropolitan Club, her membership card quietly deactivated. The hospital board froze the Kane family wing donations for audit. By noon, the story had leaked to page 6. Kane family scandal, fertility fraud, and financial cover-up. But I wasn't done. At 2:00 p.m., Claire Thompson received her own package. 1. Proof that James had been monitoring her children. 2. Evidence of Sarah's attempts to discredit her. 3. Documentation of additional funds they'd hidden from her. 4. A letter from my lawyer about violation of the original settlement. Claire's response was swift. By 3:00 p.m., her lawyers had filed motions to void the original settlement, demanding full disclosure and increased support. The Kane family empire began crumbling in real time. James's partners discovered he'd been embezzling client funds to pay for his various cover-ups. Sarah's society friends started quietly dropping her from committee lists. The charity circuit, which had been their power base, turned toxic overnight. But the personal implosion was even more satisfying. Sarah showed up at my office, face twisted with rage. Security cameras captured every moment. "You ungrateful immigrant," she seethed. "We gave you everything." I looked up from my patient files, calm as a surgeon before an operation. "No, Sarah, you gave me years of abuse while hiding your son's condition. Now everyone knows why." "We'll destroy you," she threatened. I smiled. "Check your phone." As if on cue, her phone buzzed with breaking news. The Kane Family Foundation was under federal investigation for financial irregularities. Her social kingdom was burning. James tried a different approach. He showed up at our townhouse that evening, drunk and desperate. "We can fix this," he slurred. "I'll do the tests, whatever you want." "It's 6 years too late," I replied, watching him sway on our doorstep. The truth was all I ever wanted. "I loved you," he tried. "No," I corrected him. "You used me. There's a difference." The next few days brought wave after wave of revelations. 1. 3 more women came forward with similar stories about James. 2. Sarah's charity misappropriations were exposed. 3. The firm's clients began jumping ship. 4. Society columns ran daily updates on the scandal. I watched it all from a distance, having moved into a hotel under my maiden name. My lawyer handled the press inquiries with a simple statement. Dr. Ahmadi's primary concern is the years of medical fraud perpetrated against her. She trusts the relevant authorities will handle this matter appropriately. The divorce proceedings were expedited given the circumstances. James didn't contest anything. He couldn't afford more publicity. I walked away with 1. Half his assets, the legal half. 2. The Hamptons house. 3. A substantial settlement. 4. My complete vindication. But the real victory wasn't financial. 1 week after my revelations, I attended my last Kane family dinner. Not because I was invited. I walked in unannounced, wearing the same red Valentino dress I'd worn the night James proposed. The family sat around their massive dining table, clearly in crisis mode. Legal papers scattered across the antique mahogany, phones buzzing with urgent messages, faces drawn with exhaustion. Sarah's perfectly coiffed hair was unkempt. James's expensive suit wrinkled. "You have some nerve," Sarah started, but I raised my hand. "I came to return something," I said, placing a small box on the table. Inside was the Kane family fertility pendant, a Victorian piece Sarah had given me on my wedding day. "Since we're being honest now, you should know it didn't work." "You've destroyed us," James whispered. "No," I corrected him. "Your lies destroyed you. I just exposed them." I looked around the room, at the empty high chairs Sarah had used to torture me, at the family photos spanning generations of Kane's success, at the faces of people who'd watched me suffer and smiled. "You know what the worst part was?" I continued, my voice steady. "I would have accepted the truth. If you'd been honest from the start, we could have explored options, built a different kind of family. But you chose lies, manipulation, and cruelty." Sarah stood, swaying slightly, whether from emotion or her third martini, I couldn't tell. "Everything we did was to protect the Kane name. And how's that working out?" As if in answer, all their phones buzzed simultaneously. Breaking news. The Kane Family Foundation's board had voted to remove Sarah as chairwoman. The dynasty was crumbling in real time. "You'll never work in this city again," Sarah threatened weakly. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in years. "I start at Johns Hopkins next month, as department head. Turns out, being a victim of medical fraud makes you very sympathetic to hiring committees." James hadn't moved, staring at his scotch like it held answers. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," I replied. "That's the beauty of truth. Once it's out, my work is done. You get to live with the consequences, just like I lived with your lies." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Sarah? Those fertility treatments you paid for, the ones that showed inconclusive results. The doctors admitted they were reporting false negatives on your orders. I was always fertile. The problem was never me." The silence was deafening. As I walked out of the Kane mansion for the last time, I heard Sarah's wail of rage, followed by the crash of what was probably priceless crystal. 6 years of their psychological warfare had ended with a single week of truth. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Thank you. The kids' trust funds are finally being properly funded. We should have coffee sometime." Another message from the hospital board. They were renaming the Kane family wing. Would I consider lending my name to the new pediatric center? A final alert from my lawyer. The divorce was official. Dr. Zara Ahmadi was free. I stepped into the warm Manhattan evening, leaving behind the ashes of the Kane family legacy. They'd spent generations building their empire on secrets and lies. I'd torn it down with nothing but truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's world. It's about forcing them to live in reality. They say news travels fast in Manhattan's upper circles. But scandal? Scandal moves at the speed of light. Within a month of my revelations, the Kane family's carefully constructed world didn't just crumble. It imploded spectacularly, taking down more than just James and Sarah. Every lie they'd told, every person they'd manipulated, every deal they'd corrupted. It all came rushing to the surface like a toxic tide. The first domino fell at Kensington and Kane. During the internal audit, they discovered James hadn't just been embezzling to cover up his fertility secret. He'd been running a complex scheme involving multiple client accounts, all carefully hidden under layers of legitimate-looking transactions. 5 other partners were implicated. The firm's reputation, built over a century, was in tatters. I received a call from Thomas Kensington himself, the founding partner's grandson. Dr. Ahmadi, his voice carried decades of old money authority. I owe you an apology. We all do. What the Keynes did to you, it wasn't just personal betrayal. It was professional misconduct of the highest order. The firm's clients began filing lawsuits. Class actions emerged. The legal community, which had once revered the Kane name, now used it as a cautionary tale in ethics seminars. Sarah's social empire collapsed next. Her charity board positions resigned in disgrace. Her country club memberships quietly revoked. Her society friends suddenly too busy for lunch. The women she'd tormented for years with her superiority and judgment now wielded their own knives, and they cut deep. But the most surprising fallout came from unexpected quarters. Maria, Sarah's former assistant, came forward with 20 years of detailed records. Every manipulation, every covered-up scandal, every bribed official, she'd documented it all. When asked why, her answer was simple. I watched them destroy people for 2 decades. Dr. Ahmadi was just the last straw. The records revealed a pattern of similar schemes. 3 other women before me, all chosen for their professional success, all manipulated into marriages with wealthy but infertile men. The Keynes had been running this social engineering project for generations, using marriage as a cover for maintaining their bloodline's appearance while hiding the truth about their genetic legacy. Claire Thompson's revelation proved particularly devastating. Her lawyers discovered that the Kane family had been manipulating genetic testing results for decades. Their prestigious bloodline traced back to the Mayflower? Medical records showed a history of male infertility going back 3 generations. Every Kane heir had actually come from carefully selected donors, chosen for their resemblance to family members. The press had a field day. Kane Dynasty, a legacy of lies. Manhattan's biggest family secret exposed. Medical fraud and social manipulation, the Kane conspiracy. But the personal stories hit harder. Women began reaching out to me, wives, ex-wives, almost wives of Kane men. Each had a similar story of gaslighting, manipulation, and shame. My lawyer's office became an unofficial support group for the casualties of Kane family ambition. Sarah's social circle started fracturing in unexpected ways. Women who'd participated in my public humiliation now faced their own reckonings. Every snide comment, every orchestrated slight, every manipulated situation, it all came back to haunt them. The Metropolitan Club's annual charity gala, usually Sarah's crowning achievement, became a battlefield of whispered accusations and shifted allegiances. Old secrets surfaced. Other families' carefully maintained facades began showing cracks. I watched it all from my new office at Johns Hopkins, where I'd started a research program on medical ethics and reproductive rights. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Then came the call I hadn't expected. James's grandmother, Eleanor Kane, requested a meeting. At 92, she was the family matriarch, the one who'd started the whole facade. I agreed to see her at her Park Avenue apartment. She sat regally in her wheelchair, every inch the dynasty queen, even in its twilight. You must think me a monster, she began without preamble. The architect of all this deception. I think you're a product of your time, I replied carefully. But that doesn't excuse perpetuating the abuse. She nodded slowly. I married Richard Kane in 1950. When we discovered he was infertile, my father-in-law gave me 2 choices: divorce in disgrace, or maintain the Kane legacy through alternative means. She poured tea from a Limoges pot, her hands steady despite her age. We chose donors carefully. Prestigious medical students usually, men who looked like Kanes. Each generation, we repeated the pattern. It became our family's best-kept secret. Until now, I added. Until you, she corrected. You're the first one who fought back effectively. She reached for a leather portfolio beside her chair. I'm dying, Dr. Ahmadi. Pancreatic cancer. Before I go, I want to make amends. This contains everything, every name, every transaction, every child born under our arrangement. Do with it what you will. The portfolio was heavy with decades of secrets. "Why give this to me?" I asked. Eleanor Kane smiled sadly. "Because you're the only one who exposed the truth, not for money or revenge, but for justice. The Kane legacy deserves to end with truth, not more lies." As I left her apartment, portfolio under my arm, my phone buzzed with breaking news. Eleanor Kane had publicly announced her terminal diagnosis and released a statement confirming everything: the generational fraud, the manipulated marriages, the covered-up infertility. She'd timed her confession perfectly with my visit. The final domino had fallen. The portfolio contained explosive revelations. 1. Names of over 30 donor-conceived Kane children spanning 3 generations. 2. Records of payoffs to medical professionals. 3. Details of arranged marriages and subsequent cover-ups. 4. Financial trails leading to offshore accounts. 5. Personal letters from affected women dating back to the 1950s. Each page revealed how deep the deception went. The Kanes hadn't just built a family. They'd engineered a dynasty through careful selection of donors, wives, and social connections. Every marriage had been a calculated move, every child a carefully planned genetic curation. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Medical institutions that had received Kane donations faced ethics investigations. Fertility clinics that had participated in the cover-ups lost their licenses. Doctors who had falsified records faced medical board reviews. But the human cost was even more staggering. James's cousins, all believing themselves true Kanes, demanded genetic testing. Family reunions became DNA revelation parties. The prestigious Kane bloodline dissolved into a web of donor connections and hidden histories. Sarah had a complete breakdown. She was admitted to a private facility in Switzerland, unable to face the destruction of her social world. Her last public appearance had been at the Metropolitan Club, where she'd thrown a champagne glass at a former friend who'd dared mention my name. James disappeared to their house in the Cayman Islands, but not before sending me one final email. "You didn't just destroy our family's present, you erased our past. I hope you're satisfied." My response was simple. The truth doesn't destroy, it reveals. Your family did this to themselves. Eleanor Kane passed away 2 weeks after our meeting, but not before giving one final interview to the New York Times. She detailed how the family's obsession with maintaining their genetic legacy had led to decades of psychological abuse, manipulated marriages, and destroyed lives. The article won a Pulitzer. The Kane family properties began selling off. 1. The Manhattan mansion went to a tech billionaire. 2. The Hamptons estate became a wellness retreat. 3. The Park Avenue apartments were converted to luxury condos. Each sale marked the end of an era, the dismantling of a dynasty built on lies. But something unexpected emerged from the ashes. The women connected by the Kane deception formed a support network. Claire Thompson started a foundation for victims of reproductive fraud. Maria, Sarah's former assistant, wrote a tell-all book that exposed similar practices in other prestigious families. I found myself at the center of a movement I hadn't intended to start. Medical ethics boards invited me to speak. Law schools used the Kane case in their curriculum. Women's organizations gave me awards I hadn't sought. 1 year after Eleanor Kane's death, I stood in my Johns Hopkins office, looking at the framed newspaper article about the scandal. My phone buzzed with a message from Claire. "First meeting of the Reproductive Rights and Ethics Foundation tonight. We saved you a seat on the board." I smiled, thinking of all those empty chairs Sarah had used to torment me. Now I was filling real chairs with purpose, helping other women claim their truth. The Kane family had tried to maintain their legacy through lies. Their true legacy turned out to be the movement their exposure created. Sometimes justice comes not in the revenge itself, but in what rises from its ashes. 3 years have passed since the Kane dynasty crumbled. They say time heals all wounds, but sometimes it does something better. It builds something stronger from the broken pieces. I'm writing this from my new office at Johns Hopkins, where the Reproductive Rights and Ethics Center now occupies an entire floor. The irony isn't lost on me. The woman once shamed for being barren now leads groundbreaking research in fertility rights and medical transparency. Last week, I received an unexpected package. Inside was Sarah Kane's personal diary, sent by her nurses from the Swiss facility where she still resides. Her note read simply, "You should know everything. The diary revealed the full extent of their dynasty's manipulation. The Kanes hadn't just engineered marriages, they'd orchestrated entire social networks to maintain their facade. Every charity board, every social club, every business partnership had been carefully calculated to protect their secret. James surfaced briefly last year, trying to restart his legal career in London. It didn't last. His reputation followed him across the Atlantic. Last I heard, he was living in a small town in Scotland, working as a legal consultant under his mother's maiden name. But this story isn't about their ending. It's about all the beginnings their ending created. The Reproductive Rights and Ethics Foundation, started by Claire Thompson and me, now helps thousands of women navigate fertility fraud cases. We've exposed similar schemes in 3 other prominent families. Each revelation brings more women forward, more stories of manipulation and shame, transformed into empowerment. Maria's book, Behind Closed Mansions, became a bestseller and is being adapted into a limited series. She's become a powerful advocate for domestic staff rights, exposing how wealthy families use their employees to maintain webs of deception. Eleanor Kane's final gift, that portfolio of family secrets, became the foundation for new legislation. The Kane Act now requires complete transparency in fertility treatments and donor processes. Medical fraud in reproductive medicine carries severe penalties. The Kane family properties found better purposes. 1. Their Manhattan mansion became a women's health center. 2. The Hamptons estate hosts retreats for fertility fraud survivors. 3. The Park Avenue Apartments house a legal aid clinic. I found personal healing too. Last year, I married Dr. Thomas Chen, a genetic researcher who values truth above all else. We're expecting our first child, naturally conceived, fully documented, no secrets. The society circles that once shunned me now study my work. Medical schools use the Kane case to teach ethics. Law firms have entire departments dedicated to reproductive rights cases. Sarah's empty chairs became filled with purpose. 1. Support group circles for fraud survivors. 2. Board seats for advocacy organizations. 3. Leadership positions in medical ethics committees. The Kane legacy transformed from a dynasty of deception into a catalyst for change. Their fall exposed not just one family's lies, but an entire system of social manipulation and medical fraud. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying what was, but in building what should have been all along. As I finish writing this, my phone buzzes with messages. 1. Claire. Another family exposed in Boston. 2. Maria. Publishing house wants a second book. 3. Thomas. Ultrasound photos of our baby. 4. The Foundation. New cases needing help. I look at Eleanor Kane's portrait, still hanging in our foundation's office. She was right. The truth doesn't just expose, it transforms. The Kanes spent generations building a legacy of lies. Their true legacy became a movement of truth. And me? I'm no longer defined by what I couldn't give them, but by what their destruction gave to others. Hope, justice, and the power of truth. Sometimes the emptiest chairs make the strongest statements. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from what we destroy, but from what we build from the ruins. Sometimes the best revenge is living truthfully, helping others, and letting karma handle the rest. Last month, I received an invitation to speak at the Manhattan Medical Society's annual gala. The event was held in the newly renamed Amati Wing for Reproductive Ethics, formerly known as the Kane Family Wing. I wore red.